Okay, well, welcome to the franchising session. Glad to see so many of you still here on late Wednesday morning. It's not the
I think we're surprised as well, actually.
It's obviously the interest of the topic.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about negotiating franchise agreements, take a different angle on it. So we got here on the panel Robert from Interstate and Panos from Wyndham. So everybody knows Wyndham, very strong franchise brand, and we've got Interstate here to talk about the classic three-way model that so many people are looking at now. So let everyone briefly introduce themselves. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Robert Crook. I'm Managing Director of Interstate Europe. We primarily look after hotels in the UK and Western Europe, and we've got colleagues that look after hotels in the CIS countries and Russia. We have about 68 in the UK and Western Europe. Interstate have been around over 50 years, US-based company. They tend to expand by acquiring management platforms around the world at points in time, and we have a great growth plan, and third-party management has become very fashionable and very popular, I would say, amongst investors, funders alike. So it's a good time for Interstate. Yeah.
Thank you. Panos Lupassis, Vice President Business Development, Middle East and Africa for the Wyndham Hotel Group. Few words about Wyndham, the largest hotel group in the world in terms of number of operating properties, 7,800 hotels, 680,000 rooms spread across 72 countries and 16 brands. In the Middle East, predominantly, if I look at our operational hotels, majority is franchise, but majority of the pipeline is management. So the model is shifting for us there. Thank you.
So my name is Babette Merzhäuser-Wood, and I'm head of franchising at Dentons. We're a global law firm. In fact, officially, we're the largest law firm in the world. A frightening thought, with more than 6,000 lawyers and offices in 120 different locations around the world. And I specialize in hotel and leisure franchising, have done for best part of 20 years now, and you can franchise all sorts of things. When I started working in hotel franchising, Europe was also mainly managed. Since then, franchising has become a much stronger part of the pipeline for many people, and I think it's now much better understood. And more people are involved in negotiating franchise agreements or converting from managed to franchised. And so we thought today we focus a little bit on the key negotiation points. We all know you can't negotiate a franchise agreement like a lease. There are certain non-negotiable elements. There are other elements that you can negotiate. There are also brands that are more flexible and brands that are less flexible. And so this is quite a topic in itself that we want to talk about today. We've got just a few simple slides. So clearly it's very straightforward. You have the franchisor and the franchisee who are negotiating with each other a very long-term agreement. So it is important to pay proper attention to it and to discuss it carefully. Often it ends up this way because it's obviously the franchisor's system that they control, and you pay them quite a lot of fees in return for a license of a hotel. And so the challenge for franchisees tends to be how to get that scale a little more balanced. And part of that is about brand selection, and part of that is about the negotiation process. So we will talk a little bit first about brand selection, making sure you have the right brand for your hotel, or there's a good marriage and partnership between the two, and also about introducing a little bit of competition into the process. And then we will talk about some of the legal terms. We'll come to that a little later. Let's talk about brand selection. I'm going to pass to Robert, because this is where he can help hotel owners.
Yeah, I think just to start off, I mean, if we're starting at the top at 12 o'clock and starting with shortlist and beauty parade and working our way around that way, I think, I mean, one of the things I would say to anybody who's considering getting into a brand relationship is just don't get into it lightly. You know, it's a long-term deal, and you're in it for life, basically. So making the wrong decision can be very, very expensive, and also very value destructive to your business. So, you know, I've written down here, you know, research, and I'll underline it 1,000 times, do your research. And I would really strongly advise you to make sure you get good, objective advice when it comes to selecting a brand. You know, and so go to professional advice. You know, I see David sat here from CBRE, sorry for the mention, but I'll mention it. But, you know, go to a professional outfit that will give you really good, objective, professional advice. Because again, at times I've seen somebody's already signed up to a management agreement or signed up to a franchise agreement, and it's absolutely the wrong brand they've signed up to. And the reason it's important is that, you know, I say you're in it for life, but it moves on to the next one, which is having a beauty parade. I think have a beauty parade of several franchises, not just one franchise, but also communicate to the message that it is a beauty parade. You know, don't let them know, and I've seen this happen, that they're the only game in town, and that you're only talking to them exclusively, because you know that will cost you in your negotiations. And so let them know that you're seeing multiple brands, and you've also got to recognise that each brand's different. Some brands are really good in the corporate market, some are good in leisure markets, some are good in conference and eventing, some are good in driving social demand. And you've got to make sure that when you're looking at your hotel, you know, what are the drivers for this market? You've got to kind of fit the brand to the hotel opportunity. And so if you're going to do conference and eventing, then maybe it shouldn't be this brand because they're not very good at it. And then there are other brands that are better at driving conference and eventing. And just make sure you fit it, for example. Again, a good example of that would be something like stadia. You know, if you're developing a hotel around a stadium, a football stadium, Hilton are quite good at that. You know, they're doing a lot of those. You know, and they seem to have got it organised when it comes to linking with big stadia type events. I'm sure Wyndham are as well, but I'm just mentioning. So understanding the drivers of the location is really important. Will the brand add a better yield on exit? You know, depending on what brand you put on it, when it comes to the final, you know, exit valuation, you know, make sure you've done your research, because some brands will give an extra turn for you rather than other brands that may not in some instances. Also understand during the beauty parade their infrastructure. What support are you going to get? The salesman's wonderful. You know, the guy that sells the brand is a great guy, and he sells a story and a dream, and we buy into it. But I want to know everybody that's going to be working on my hotel. Talk me through the sales structure, the revenue structure, the property structure. What are the brand standards like? How do we change the brand standards? What influence do I have as an owner to influence brand standards? What's the approval process for brand standards? What's the audit process? You know, what are the fee structure? All that sort of thing you need to sort of really get into and make sure you're doing it. And also, what is the process for ongoing communication? You then get into a fee proposal, which is, you know, typically a new build hotel should have a ramped up fees. There are some fees that are negotiable. Typically, technical services fees are negotiable. Signing on fees are negotiable. So things like reservations and marketing fees tend not to be, but the royalty is, and that should be stepped. And you should be looking over the first 10 years, you know. I know if there's any brand people in the room, apart from Wyndham, that they wouldn't like that, but you've got to really negotiate and step it up, you know. So it's, you know, so 1% in year one, 1.25%, building up to the maximum royalty. And also, what is the cost of the property improvement plan? If I'm going to convert this into a, you know, a Wyndham property or a DoubleTree or a Hilton, what is it actually going to cost? And what you need to do is don't believe the salesman. I say that. Don't believe the salesman, because they always pitch it low. Get proper advice on what it's actually going to cost, you know, before you commit. Because I've found situations where people have signed up to doing something and they found the PIP has doubled in price because the brand people have got involved and they say, you know, this is way too much. So get that right. I mean, other things you need to consider. Look at their online delivery. You know, what is their system delivery? And when I talk about that, I'm talking about delivery through GDS system, through the web, through connected online intermediaries, online travel agents, and through voice, through their central reservation systems. And you want to see statistics. You want to see real hard statistics of, hotels in the same town, ideally, or the same city. What are they getting? You want to see statistics from similar type of hotels, conference hotels, all that sort of stuff you need to do. And the other thing, probably most important thing, which people fail to do time and time again, is get references. Go and speak to some franchisees that are already using this brand, in the same brand, and ask them about their experience. And you might ask for a list, you'll get a list, but go digging and find out some other ones. Just go and call on some, find the owner's name, talk to them about it, and you'll make a much more informed decision about the choice you make. And as it's been said, you're in it for life, and there's no escape from it, really. So you need to get the right decision. So that's that one too.
I think that's very, very good sound advice for hotel owners. But let's chat a little bit about the brand perspective then, Panos. How do you, when an owner approaches you and they're looking, you have a portfolio of brands, of course, sure. Edwin. How do you help them pick the right brand?
Sure. So we have 16 brands, but we're not bringing all of these brands, let's say, in the Middle East or Africa or Europe. So it's selected brands that we're putting in place. So basically, we have brands at the 2-star level. So that's the Super 8, 3-star level, Ramada Encore, Days Inn, 4-star level, Ramada, Trip by Wyndham. Upper mid-scale would be Ramada Plaza and Wyndham Garden. Upscale, Wyndham, and upper upscale, Wyndham Grand.
And you franchise all those brands?
Middle East and Africa, we wouldn't franchise Ramada Plaza and all the Wyndham tiers. We would manage selectively. Now, the way it would work, similarly, all the points that you mentioned, Robert, are very valid in terms of due diligence from the side of the owner. Equally, for ourselves, we do our own due diligence on the owner. So basically, we would look at the plot, we would look at the potential built-up area, we would look at visibility, accessibility, proximity to demand generators, the built-up area, all these things, the investment cost, the anticipated investment cost from the side of the owner. Does it fit a 2-star brand, a 3-star brand, a 5-star brand? Then we would request or recommend a feasibility study. So we want to make sure that the owner vision is in line with what the market needs. Meaning, does the market need an extended stay at that specific location, or should it be a 3-star? Is it a 3-star location, a 5-star location? So the engagement of professional advice from the outset, basically, it's extremely important so that the owner has the right expectations and we can discuss accordingly. So then we're looking at, between the build-up area, the location of the project, the investment cost, we will basically propose the brand that we deem more suitable. And then we will start the process through an offer, the fee proposal, and then engage into the discussions.
Are you often in beauty parades? Are you often up against other brands all the time? Yeah?
Well, whenever we get invited in a tender, operator selection, which is run by consultants, there is a minimum of 5-7 to. There was a case that I participated with 20 brands. That's quite tedious, and it can be aside time consuming, very confusing for the owner. Eventually, when you come with a matrix in front of them of an offer from 20 different brands, it becomes extremely complicated. For us, the beauty in the Middle East and Africa is that few companies franchise, and those who franchise less brands than us. So that puts us in a very good position in terms of basically coming forward and, let's say, getting the deal, if you want. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, I just wanted to mention other, brands and consultants in the room. Feel free to contribute. Just, put your hand up if you, want to disagree with us or add a different angle. So always more fun if there's a bit of controversy and debate than if we just talk at you. So obviously we've got a brand representative and we've got a neutral representative, and we're going to try to look at it from all angles. Let's look a little bit in the slides we have. Oops, it's not scrolling.
Just escape.
Yeah, escape.
So I just click it.
Yeah.
Oh,
you've done it, yeah.
Over there?
Yeah, you've done it. So we've got a few more detailed talking points around the brand selection, and then we're going to move on to the sort of contractual points as well.
I think some of this we've covered, haven't we? So I think size and scale is quite an important point in your market. You know, sometimes there's benefit to being the first hotel of a certain brand in a market. Sometimes there's real risk associated with that in terms of system delivery and awareness. And you've got to really think that one through as to whether you want to be the first of a brand in a market, or you want to be maybe the second or third of a similar brand, you know, through the same brand family, if it's going to be a branded hotel.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I was chatting to an owner in Eastern Europe yesterday who's doing something quite unique and new, and the advice he's had is don't pick a brand that's in your country for the first time and be the guinea pig. Now that sounds, I guess you have to weigh, and I'd be interested in people's views, the uniqueness of having the first something special against the fact that maybe the brand will not know your country and your market.
No, I've actually seen instances of that, and genuinely, you know, you've got to part the vanity and just think sanity here. You don't want to be the first of anything. It's very risky, you know, in my experience, because it all comes down to system delivery. And if you're a new entrant in a market that nobody knows, you know, it is just painful. So that comes into brand selection. Don't select them, would be my advice. Yeah. Unless they've got some unique story, you know, and they've got to have a really unique selling proposition, I would say.
What if it's a new brand from an existing player, like Wyndham have, what did you say, 20 different brands? So let's say 10 of them are already in the market, and now they're introducing number 11?
Yeah, I think, and again, my experience, and I can be critical of brands every now and again, but I think every now and again brands invent another brand just to, you know, get themselves into another market, you know, and and it becomes very confusing for the customer. You know, the customer hasn't got a clue. Sorry, right. You know, brands, all right, okay, I went down one. And they invent brands just to get another slice of the market. But what actually happens is they dilute the market, you know, with just more bedrooms sometimes. And I also think it can be, you know, for existing owners, unless there's clear impact policy, you know, around another brand coming in of the same family, impact policies are a big issue. You know, it needs to go on the checklist of things you ask. You know, what is the impact policy if you come in with another Hilton or another, you know, Ibis, or, you know, or another Wyndham hotel? What happens to me? What happens to my pipeline? Because my pipeline is being shared by more hotels, so therefore I'm getting less of the pie. And that needs to be an upfront discussion, definitely, and really negotiate hard on that, I would say.
And I guess in terms of a franchise, what is the actual service you're going to get? You clearly, in a franchise, you get the license to call the property a certain name, you know, Sheraton, Hilton, whatever you select. In addition to that, what services are there? For those with a management background, that can be quite confusing, because the brand obviously does not manage your hotel in a franchise. You manage that property yourself. So the services from the brand are more the services that are centrally done around marketing, obviously the promotion of the brand, particularly in a new market. There can be quite a lot of debate around, well, how much marketing will you do in Poland, because my hotel is in Poland? And the answer will be, well, actually, we cannot guarantee that at all. That's centrally decided by our brand fairies based in a central office somewhere, and the promotion will be to promote the brand worldwide. That can be a point of debate. There will be certain central services.
What would you do there? I mean, could you carve out in the negotiation and say, well, if you're not going to be spending money in my market, you know, say you're in Romania or somewhere, you know, where they've only got one hotel, maybe, could you carve out something and say, well, we want that as a local pot of money to spend locally, as opposed to...
I see owners asking for that a lot. Brands are not fond of this request.
And they should be, shouldn't they, really? Because that's doing the right thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's difficult to get unless the owner has a lot of properties, would be my experience. But let's see what Panos has to say.
I mean, Middle East is quite unique, and particularly the Gulf. The owners are willing. We know and we see many owners willing to introduce new brands and take that risk if you want. Sometimes it's because they already are working with a specific operator or a specific franchisor on a specific brand, and they have a great relationship and they trust the service that they're receiving, but they cannot get the brand that they're actually targeting because of an area of protection or a presence of a hotel under that specific brand in the area where they have the plot. So in this case, they basically approach the brand owners, and they're willing to try a new brand. Now, the beauty when you go to a brand and basically you say, I have a project and I would like to, what's available, and they offer you a new brand. The beauty is that actually you can negotiate great terms because you're actually the one facilitating them in introducing the brand in that specific territory. So you can achieve particular discounts or that will make the whole deal more enticing. So that's an opportunity always. And the brand owners are willing to basically do certain, apply certain discounts or, that will create more benefit for the owner.
And obviously nothing stops you from doing your own local marketing.
No.
In addition to the central marketing in a franchise agreement that is completely within the control of the franchisee. Then depends on whether the owner is an experienced owner that has his own operating team, or whether the owner partners with someone like Interstate, a sort of white label management company that can assist with your own local or regional marketing campaign. That would be to position that property in its market, wouldn't it, Robert?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we do that everywhere. So I think this is an opportunity to carve some money out of the negotiation, to say we're going to allocate that to local marketing, you should do it, and talk to them about it. Particularly if you're a very remote hotel where there is little brand exposure, and it's really important you do that in discussions.
So I guess different from a managed property, the owner does not in a franchise have to purchase all the services it needs from the brand. It will obviously have to purchase certain mandatory services because those are the ones that make the hotel a brand hotel. So typically marketing, yes, that would be mandatory. Usually there would be participation in a reservation system, and there would be separate fees for that. It's usually an amount per reservation, but there could be other optional services that you can buy, a menu of services most brands would have, where owners can say, okay, I'd like these additional things that obviously come at a cost, or you buy those elsewhere, and maybe even have your own, like property management system. I imagine that's not mandatory with Wyndham, is it? The property management system?
The recommendation is always for Opera because that allows easier two-way interface. So there is at least a long list of approved systems if you want. So
How many systems is
the list?
How many?
So I know of 27.
That's a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Yeah.
So we're flexible. That's what it means, basically.
Yeah.
We're not saying only Opera or only this or that.
Yeah.
We're saying that you take this one, we take that.
But it makes technology development difficult, doesn't it? And interface is difficult and things like that.
No, all of these systems we've reviewed them, and they're basically compatible with what we got. So we're not restricting the owners to work with a specific system. It's a little bit more open, so we're more flexible on that front.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you bring your own property management system?
No,
or
I mean,
yield
whether
management
if it's a
system, or would you
if it's a
recommend
brand,
the owner takes the one from the brand?
Opera is the brand of choice really, and it mainly because it is well serviced. You can get the spare parts. The upgrades are there on a regular basis, and everybody knows it. And service is good. Yeah. And it's more expensive, but its database management and its interfacing is well known. I have to say, in certain brands like Hilton, you use the on-queue system. I know further out, you can use Opera with Hilton as well, but certainly around Western Europe, it's definitely on-queue systems. But and in my experience, you want to limit it. You don't want to do something that's a system that's not compatible or people don't know. Use a recognised system because it makes training so much easier. You recruit a receptionist, they know what they're doing. You recruit a reservation manager, they know what they're doing. They know how to use the system. So.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, some owners that might start unbranded and then eventually call a brand.
And rebrand,
and then if you have a system whereby the data that has been collected over all these years are of no use, then really it's a pity, it's a shame.
Invest in a good PMS system.
Yeah, so in a way, you got your process from your shortlist that we've spoken about to the interview and the references to the term sheet. So let's talk a little bit about the term sheet. Most brands will first give you an expression of interest if they think your project sounds like it makes sense and they have a brand that they think would fit your property. From that, you whittle it down to hopefully not 20, I would say. More realistic would be maybe 3. And you look at negotiating term sheets with those that will have key commercial details in them. It's important, in my experience, to negotiate these documents because it will become difficult at the later stage to introduce new commercial features. So the term sheet is a document that some professional advice should be taken on. Most brands have very experienced legal departments that will represent the brand in these discussions, and owners need to also consider taking some advice on the term sheet because it will lead into some relatively sophisticated contracts.
Which are this thick, yeah. I mean, they are big contracts, aren't they? So read the small print.
Yes, it depends on the brand's background, but the contracts are detailed, and there's not just one contract, there are several agreements. Typically, you're looking at a franchise agreement, that's your main license, that is a long-term contract. There will be a design review or technical services agreement, as you would have with the management contract as well, which is about the technical specification for that property. And the contract is about the assistance provided by the brand with getting the design right. So that is an important agreement as well. There can be a substantial fee payable. It's important to ensure that this is a document that actually delivers some services to the owner of the hotel. And some brands will have a separate trademark license agreement, a separate electronic systems license agreement. It depends on the setup, whether some services come from a different country. For example, the US, I think you were saying, with Wyndham, some services are set in the US and others are provided from
And
Europe.
agreements-wise, yes, it's a license agreement. And if there is the need for the provision of technical services, then there is a technical services agreement.
Yeah.
And also there's a point there around how you pay those fees, because, are they in local currency, are they in dollars, and just understand that, because again, that's open to risk.
Typically in dollars,
yeah, typically in dollars. So just make sure you understand that and the cost of doing that in the discussions. So.
Yeah, and there can be withholding taxes as well, depending on where a hotel is based and where the fees are paid to. Within Europe, by and large, there are double taxation agreements that sort of neutralize the impact of these taxes, but it's possible that a withholding tax of between 5 and 20%, I think in Latin America I've seen as high as 30%, can apply. Now, if that is something the owner has to pay in addition, then that increases your cost by 30%. So it's important to look into that. And doesn't require expensive tax advice. A good franchising lawyer should be able to look that up in a table and tell you very quickly. And so you can address that up front rather than have an unpleasant surprise. And I would do all that at the term sheet stage. So, oops, that was a bit quick. So from the term sheet, you kind of, you obviously lead into the contract. So let's look at key features of a franchise agreement that require some negotiation with the brand. There's obviously the term, the duration of the contract, and one sees a variety. Management contracts are very long documents. I see up to 50 years in some cases. Franchise agreements tend to be on the shorter side. Originally in Europe...
Why are they so long? Why are they so long? Because it's crazy, isn't it? 50, I mean, absolutely mental.
The 50 years
Let's
now,
ask the brands. I think it's to do with how it sits in their balance sheet, isn't it?
I don't think anybody's selling 50-year agreements nowadays.
Yeah, I really hope not.
It's excessive. It's really excessive. I would agree with you.
Excessive is an understatement. It's ridiculous.
I mean, our typical franchise agreement will be like 20 years. And if there's a specific reasons where the franchisee has an interest for 15 years, that's not an issue. I mean, we can entertain that.
Do you know, I think the brand that cracks the length of contract point, and says you can get out in 10 years' time, or you can change it, they'll win. They'll really, they'll clean up the good brands that do that. It's the inflexibility of these long-term contracts, which are just, painful.
It is the biggest debate, particularly for owners that are new to hotels, owners from markets where there hasn't been a lot of contracting with major global brands. I'm doing a lot of work in Eastern Europe at the moment with owners, and it's just frightening to some people, the idea that a contract could be that long. And they say, what if we just don't get on with the people? They literally worry about these things, and so it is a big point of debate. It's obviously also a business decision. I would say normally, if the relationship is a good one, then a flag change is a cost. So why have that cost if all is going well? But to have the right to do it can be an important point to many owners.
Which kind of leads to your termination rights point, doesn't it really? How do I get out of it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So in terms of a franchise, it's not a management agreement, so there's no performance termination, not normally. I see it popping up occasionally, but typically you're just looking at termination for breach, and it would depend on the brand and the choice of law. This gets quite technical now, whether the franchisee would have that right. The brand for sure will be able to terminate. The franchisee, if they are a bad franchisee and therefore their hotel is a bad representation of the brand, there will be the usual notice to cure, and if you don't fix it, ultimately at some point there could be termination. Brands do not like to terminate, so I wouldn't be too frightened of that, because there'll be a warning process first. But that's the way the contracts tends to be. It's typically hard to negotiate much of that. But on the franchisee side, to look for at least a right to terminate for material breach if things go really bad is an important discussion point.
Not paying them, they will terminate you. If you're not paying them, then they tend to cut you off after.
That might be the way out.
Yeah, that might be the way out. Yeah. But they'll sue you.
There'll be liquidated damages payable, typically in that scenario, and this is another negotiation point, would be what is the amount that a franchisee has to pay when exiting early. There'll be a formula, typically looking at a multiple of the franchise sometimes and the marketing fee, although the marketing fee shouldn't really be a source of profit. So it should be like between 3 and 5 years fees is what
a calculation based on the royalty that they would earn over that period.
What do you do at Wyndham, Panos, around owners wanting to?
Well, the option of termination, as you mentioned, is not there. But in case something goes wrong, then what you call liquidated damages are basically 3 years of fees.
Yeah. So that would normally be the price for leaving. So that's expensive, but obviously there's also the cost of a flag change to consider anyway, because in addition to that payment, there would obviously be some changes, a PIP from the new brand, unless someone goes no brand. So.
And it's a very negative exercise. So if you can avoid the branding, so that's why the selection of the brand and the selection of the owner goes both ways, and it's extremely important to be the right, so you have the best fit between the two parties. So that's extremely important. The early stages, as we call it, the due diligence stage.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How about just an ordinary break clause? Do you see that at all?
No, but I would love to see one. Yeah. Break clauses I just think are important. And I think if you get the opportunity to negotiate, particularly around this last point around area of protection, and if what you're buying into is not what it is 5 years later, and because there's been so many other hotels come into the market and you've been diluted and you're not seeing it, then I think you need to be able to negotiate a position where you can do something, and that's a tough one, and it's a new thought, but brands don't like it, but you've got to push for it, really push hard to try and get that sort of break if you can.
I think what is possible is for an owner with a large portfolio of hotels
you've got more leverage,
to, let's say, if there's 10 hotels, it may be possible to say, I'm going to maintain a minimum of 8 with Wyndham, but over a period of 5 years, I can take 2 out. That I have seen.
Personally, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah. Because they might also bring more in if they feel that they're not locked in. Another area around termination and flexibility is obviously selling the hotel and how that impacts the relationship of the owner with the brand. So I see some owners, to them it's very important for the brand to promise that if the owner is selling the hotel, the brand will stay on board because they want to sell the hotel with the brand in situ. Others feel like the new buyer might not like Sheraton, they might want Hilton, and so I'm reducing my pool of buyers if I'm, committed to a particular brand. So maybe let's talk about that for a moment.
Well, depending on which way you look at it, it can be value enhancing or it can be destructive. If you can sell a business free and unencumbered, with management and free and unencumbered with brand, that has its plus points. It also has its negative points. So depending on the brand, I would say if the brand isn't performing and you don't feel it's adding long-term value, then the ability to sell it unencumbered with a brand is ideal. But most brands don't allow you to do that. There's no parole on sale. You're still there. And you have to stick with it, unfortunately. So unless you negotiate it right at the very beginning, and get that negotiation right. So.
Yeah, so from our side, it all relates to the initial due diligence. So the initial due diligence relates to selecting the right owner. So the right owner is basically an entity that has the management skills, the skills to basically, an owner that you can trust the brand, you can give them the brand and they will manage it and they will not jeopardize the standards and the service levels that you actually target. And so basically it has to be somebody who has the management skills, somebody who has, let's say, the financial standing to execute the development in line with the originally set vision, and clearly an entity that is reputable. So now the same parameters is when a sale is taking place, you want the new entity to basically be able to fit into these specific parameters. So for example, if the buyer is an entity that has a certain reputation in the market of, let's say, not paying bills, then eventually this specific reputation will be exercised as soon as you take over the property. And eventually the different suppliers will not be getting paid. The hotel will develop a certain negative notoriety and eventually reputation. And then eventually this will be affecting the brand. And the reality is that the customers that are coming at the hotel, they don't know that the property is franchised. They see the brand, they think it belongs even to the brand. That's the perception many times, They think the hotel is owned by the brand. They don't know if it's managed or if it's franchised. So it's directly affecting the brand. So we just do the same checks that we do when we sign the original contract, the exact same checks we do when we basically are discussing the assignment, as we call it, or sale. And it has to make sense.
Yeah, so the negotiation usually tends to be around a sort of criteria that apply to a qualifying new owner. Because as many owners are investors, if they sign a 20-year franchise agreement, that may not be their investment horizon. They may look to develop the project, put the brand on it, get the hotel up to full capacity, and maybe after 5 to 10 years, look to sell the development or parts of it to somebody else. So the debate tends to be, I cannot have the brand sit there and in their sole discretion say, I like this guy and I don't like that guy. So one tends to work on a list of criteria, like obviously no criminals, not on the naughty person lists of any governments. That tends to be less problematic. Not a competitor. Depends on how you define competitor a little bit. Obviously, broad, if it's another owner that has a portfolio of 20 hotels with a mix of different brands, that shouldn't be a competitor. And then is there something around reputable? Is there something around not in litigation with the brand already? So my recommendation is let's have a finite list and not any other thing that we can think of in the future. So Yes, what else? Let's talk about AOP. That's an important one. So that, I mean, an area of protection for the hotels. So particularly for new properties, will there be, let's say, you sign up with Wyndham for a Ramada, and will there be a Ramada Encore next door? Will there be a promise that for the life of the franchise agreement, there will be a circle drawn around your hotels, and in that area, they will not place a competing property? What's the position that you can offer?
Well, what do you offer as a standard area of protection? What would you offer?
Well, first of all, we're open to discuss areas of protection. I think it's a reasonable request from the side of the owner, that puts forward a development and wants to safeguard his interest, her interest. Yeah. The size of the area of protection is directly correlated to the project under discussion. So is it a 200-room hotel? Is it a 50-room hotel? Is it in a town? Is the location AAA? Is it in a town which has a population of 50,000 people, or is it 5 million people? So every project has different parameters that define basically the area of protection that we can allocate. We don't mind if it's 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers. It will have to make sense. We'll have to look at the specific property and the implications. And always the area of protection is on the specific level. So if it's a 3-star brand, it's on the 3-star brand. It's not on the 4-star brand or the 5-star brand. Yeah.
You can always tell where that negotiation is going when the brand come along. They want to start talking in meters. As opposed to kilometres, and you need to talk kilometres and start at 5 and don't climb down on it, I would say.
But I guess it's a fair point. It does depend on the market. Let's say you are in London, you would probably look at a much smaller area than you would if you are in Dortmund, Germany. You might say, okay, it's going to be the only Ramada in Dortmund, Germany, because there is only so much capacity, in a place like that for that type of hotel. Whereas in London, I guess you might end up talking meters, or how far would a customer walk? Would you really stay in the West End if your meetings are in the East End? You probably wouldn't.
Yeah, that will vary. Yeah.
So this is one point, is the size. The second point is how long.
Yes.
So the owner's position would be for the entire duration of the contract. I think the brand position often is during a certain ramp-up period, and eventually it will start fizzling out. And one sees a whole host of different variations. I mean, maybe let Panos explain from the brand position.
You can do it in different ways. You can have for the full contract, you can have a certain area, a larger area for the first years and a smaller area for the next 5 years, and then nothing. There's all kinds of combinations. And again, they're directly correlated to the project under discussion.
Yeah.
So the stronger the proposition, the more, let's say, so that's direct correlation there.
So can I ask something about fees?
Of course.
Key money, really.
Yeah.
I mean, how prevalent is that? Are you seeing that brands offering key money?
I see a fair bit of key money being paid. In franchising, obviously, the key money isn't so substantial as it would be, with management agreements. And also it depends on the size of the hotel and whether there's maybe more than one hotel to be had from an owner.
Yeah. But it might be if you were rebranding, and say you're going to rebrand from one brand to a Ramada, the brand may offer some money to cover signage changes and things like that. If I've seen that.
I see that also.
Yeah.
Not very common, but yes, indeed possible, especially if the opportunity deserves it and makes sense. To enter a specific market that you have never managed, let's say, to enter, or for a location or a project that is, can yield great results. So
definitely push for that. Do not climb down on that one. That's fine.
So just to clarify, for those that maybe don't know what key money is, it's a payment that the brand will make to the owner to sign up with that brand to help cover some of the cost of the flag change. Typically, it's tied to a long-term commitment, so you may have to pay that back if there's early termination, and typically, you see the key money written off over, let's say, a 10-year period. So let's say it's 100,000 euros, then that would be 10,000 euros per year. So after 10 years, you kind of earn that back and you don't have to give it back. That's a formula I often see.
So Middle East and Africa, extremely uncommon. Basically, you rarely find
rarely
something.
find it.
Rarely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, more common, I think, in Europe, probably.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anything else on fees that we should talk about? I guess mostly these fees are not negotiable, except as Robert was saying, that the franchise fee ramp up. So yeah, that is probably time to go on. So we've kind of covered this. Yeah, we've covered most of these points. So let's talk a little bit more maybe about the details of the sale, some of the things we've got in there. So a franchise agreement will have some detailed provisions around the sale, not just a right to terminate on sale, but also the sale process. We've spoken about the position, as Panos rightly explained, that you can't just impose somebody on them as the new owner of the hotel. There's got to be someone who will be a good owner, and you know how much criteria do you have. There will often also be a requirement to renovate the hotel. You know, a brand will always look at what point in time is there a good chance to go around the hotel and to say, okay, you want our approval for something, here's a list of things you must do. So from the brand perspective, it makes sense to say on sale, you know, because there's a lot of money discussions anyway. Let's get the new owner to fix a few things that need fixing.
Yeah, it's often a time, if a new owner is coming in, it's often a time where the brand will take a position on things. Say, you know, the previous owner hasn't been refurbishing, as you say, or hasn't been on top of the quality of the product, or there was a big issue in the UK last year around carbon reduction commitment payments, where a lot of hotels and franchisees just weren't paying it to the brand because there was a big fallout over that and whether or not they had the right to demand payment. And often in a renegotiation, they will use it as a tactic to say, you've got to bring this payment up to date, otherwise we're not going to approve the new owner. So you know, that's things that do go on occasion. So.
Now let's remember that when an owner has the intention to sell a property, most probably this is not a decision today for tomorrow. And it's basically a process that started 3, 4, 5 years back. And over this period, because the intention to sell is there, and there are always opportunities that are coming, but they're not materializing, the investment that goes back into the property from a FF&E reserve perspective, in terms of correcting the facilities, let's say, or upgrading, has really gone to a minimum. So the more we approach to this actual opening day, sale date, you find that the property is more and more like declining in terms of quality, and sometimes that's performance. And this is where, you know, the need for such property improvement plan comes more into place in the case of the sale.
So it's not an unreasonable request. I think the point is maybe around if there's an early sale, then it shouldn't be necessary. There's also a point around what's known as a PIP fee. That's different from the cost of the new carpets. That's the fee for the brand telling you which new carpets you need, and to agree a reasonable fee on that as well.
And often the new buyer will chip the price, you know, on you know, if there's a gap on the PIP that you haven't done and it's not brand compliant, they'll take it off the price, you know. So, you know, it's swings and roundabouts, really.
Yeah, so it's also obviously in the interest of the owner to keep the hotel looking good and up to brand standards to avoid these difficulties upon a sale. I mean, one has to say often the contracts read tougher than the real life position is. This is the, you know, kind of fallout between legal agreements and commercial relationships. Often in practice, the working relationships can be very good, but when franchise agreements are seen for the first time by new owners, it can be a bit of a shock, you know, because it's a license to use a brand, and the whole contract is about obligations that the hotel owner has if they want that brand. So that is a learning curve for many owners, and it's you know, interesting that different brands take different approach to the level of reasonableness they're happy to introduce into that relationship. So another aspect that can be difficult to understand for some owners is the system and the system changes. So you buy more than a name when you enter into franchise agreement. let's say, a license for a Ramada is not just the sign on the door and what's written on the shampoos in the bathroom. There are other things that go with the look and feel of the hotel. The brand will innovate from time to time and come up with clever new features where they say, really, you got to have that in your hotel because we find guests really love it. I don't know whether it's free Wi-Fi or a new feature, I don't know, charging station in the reception or a talking area, a mixing lounge, whatever. They will come up with that and they will say, okay, we are asking our owners now to start introducing that. There'll be a cost to that, and there'll be concerns on the owner's side around, being made invest when maybe it's a new property. People say, what, if I've just bought new TVs, can they say tomorrow, change all the TVs? Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, the contract will provide that they can, and there can be debate around this point.
Yeah, I think brand changes, system changes, brand standard changes, technology changes. They are detailed in the contract about a process, but it's all up for negotiation. If you've just changed your TVs to 42-inch, new LEDs, and the brand in their wisdom want to take them all up to 49 as a minimum standard, then you're just not changing, and you're going to put a 5-year, hold on that, or a 7-year, depending on, and there will be a point in time where you want to change them because that's what happens. But you've just got to negotiate hard on those things, and it's about being reasonable. I think it would be unreasonable of a brand to come along and say, you've just spent this money, sorry, you've got to change them.
But you would not do that, would you?
It's about reasonableness, as we said, and many items have like a life cycle, so you can, So
next time you replace them,
for example, and amenities and all these things, you can keep them, then they get used, and then the next order, up to the stocks that are being used, etc. Sometimes the changes are imposed by the market and the competition, whereby everybody around you basically introduces certain features, and suddenly you're finding yourself with your smaller whatever TV screen that you're off market basically, and you get complaints because you have a large room but your TV is tiny and the TV standard has changed, so you need to follow the market. So
definitely. I mean, Wi-Fi is a good example of that, free Wi-Fi that actually works. It's been a struggle actually in the last few days, but it is that is where lots of companies, hotels invested in big infrastructure within the hotels, were paying lots of rental fees, and then all of a sudden the market goes free, therefore you're not getting any revenue, therefore you've just got a big cost, and that's difficult, but you've just got to, that's the market dictating free Wi-Fi.
Absolutely.
And usually the ability of the brand to change the system, it's non-negotiable. I see people deleting that in franchise agreements. That's not good advice. What can be looked at is saying, don't make us change expensive new items until they've been written down. Like the TV example, but in my experience, they would not do that either.
System upgrades is an interesting one though, because whether updating the technology on the central reservation system, for example, your hardware may not be capable of dealing with it, and what's the life cycle of a computer these days? If it's 5 years, then that's probably plenty. You need to think about that because they do upgrade the technology periodically, and your kit just isn't up to it in terms of dealing with it. So.
And it's what the brand should deliver. Is if they know the market requires this type of system now, let's say to compete with the OTAs, then it's usually, it's well thought after. It's not done on a whim to cause a cost. It's done because research suggests that it's needed. The one thing I would say, though, that one encounters in many license agreements and that I personally don't think is a reasonable ask is the right to change the hotel name. I would normally recommend that, if the hotel is going to be the Marriott Warsaw, then that's the agreed name, and it should not be changed, because that's what you're paying for it to be a Marriott. So if Marriott in their wisdom decide to drop the Marriott brand and call it something else, that should be agreed. So we've got some of the fees here. We've probably talked around marketing already and some of the central services. and optional services that you can buy in addition.
Yeah, you can buy into revenue management services. You know, if you're a franchise, you can. That's the main one, really. That people tend to buy on, where it's centrally managed through the system, if you want to, or you could recruit your own revenue manager, and they can do it.
Or some franchisees, you know, because the property is small, they have a very slim, let's say, manning structure.
Yes.
And they require assistance. So basically, they tell you, okay, can you do this and that for me? So basically, then there are also charges if they're optional, truly optional. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is, I mean, all brands will have a menu. You know, they'll have a booklet, an overview of the things that there are, from the plaque on the door to the shampoos to the services that you can buy or must buy, and just important to sit down and talk through that. Sometimes a disclosure document will be available with very detailed explanations of how the fees work, and also on what basis the fees can be changed. It's important to read that. Yeah. It's a big document, and you know, sometimes owners just think, Jesus, you know, 80 pages, you know, I haven't got time to read that. But you know, then give it to someone in finance who will read it, because it does set out some really important stuff, and it should not be put to one side. And you know, so lots of effort goes into these documents to make sure there's no misunderstanding. So I do recommend to read them. Here are some of the other systems that are typically available. I think we've talked about those.
Sorry, can you just go back? Just mention loyalty program. During your review, really understand their loyalty program, not only the cost of it, but the size of it, and not just the number of members that they'll quote, because you know every brand will quote that they've got the biggest loyalty scheme on the planet. But what I mean is how many are actually active members. Understand that. How many are actually active in your market, and try and get more into the detail of it. That's really, really important.
And actually the specifics of the loyalty program, and meaning how does it work?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the biggest confusion with any loyalty program is you don't know how many points you got, and you don't know at what level you redeem, and what you can get when you redeem. So this is where last year we relaunched, for example, and we say every stay you get a minimum of 1,000 points. 15 stays you get one free night, and you can spend it anywhere. You can spend it at the recently opened yesterday Super 8 in Munich, or the Wyndham we opened last week in Dubai. So very simple, basically. Every stay 1,000, 15 stays, free stay. You stay everywhere, no blackout dates, nothing.
Yeah. Okay,
so
that's good.
Yeah, you need to make it simple, basically. So
I agree. Some are very complex.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and another thing that I came across the other day was how do you pay for the loyalty program? So I've seen some proposals where the fee is based on that someone who stays at the hotel is a member of the loyalty program, even though they've booked through Booking.com. That may be a point of debate, I think, because obviously you get signed on routinely now. I find every time I stay in a new hotel, the reception staff get you to sign on to the loyalty program. So then I'm a member of the loyalty program. So is that then a qualifying stay for that fee?
It's not, actually. Booking.com or bookings through third-party OTAs, let's say, they're not loyalty program rewards qualifying stays. Yeah,
So you need to understand that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is some of the nitty-gritty, but it is set out in those disclosure documents, so do read those. So we've spoken a little bit about some of the other money-sensitive features of a franchise relationship. There's the impact of withholding taxes depending on where the licensing legal entity is set up. You know, often in a tax-efficient jurisdiction, but look at how that relates to the specific country where the hotel is located. There's obviously insurance. There will be a requirement to have a number of insurance contracts, which will be listed out in the agreement. Depending on where the hotel is located, not all that insurance may be easily available.
I mean, the insurance thing is something that really annoys me, I've got to admit. That, I mean, some of the bigger brands, where they'll insist that you have, a $10 million, dollar cover for claims out of the US, for visiting parties that might claim from the US. And Do you know, I think, I won't say what brand I was talking to, but when you look back at the number of actually claims of that nature that are actually in reality happened in certain markets, you know, particularly in markets where your customer is totally domestic and you don't have any, you know, US travellers that really come that often, you know, to fall in the bath or trip on the stairs or do anything to sue you for. You're paying way in excess, you know, on some of these things. And you've got to really just understand the dynamics of that. So your premiums are far more than they should be based on the number of, you know, accidents. So during your negotiation with your, you know, some brands which just won't move on it, I understand that. But in negotiation with your insurance company, you've got to look at the actual risk rather than the, the actual risk rather than what could possibly happen. You know, it's. You know,
I mean, one thing we observe is that very often the owners, when they get the insurance, let's say appendix, with certain requirements that they have to meet, they try to source the insurance locally.
Yes.
And that's possible in certain countries, but not possible in all countries because the sophistication is not there, or the level of the insurance companies, they cannot actually provide the coverage that's required. So what we recommend, you know, there is also the umbrella insurance facility that's provided through the groups, the franchisors. So it's always worth, you know, give it to your local guy, you know, your buddy, let's say, and also work with the brand owner and see what the quote that will come from the umbrella insurance, because sometimes it's the premiums are very small for the coverage that you get.
Yeah, you should explore all options.
Well, obviously, there'd be scale. So, you know, a brand like Wyndham with so many thousands of hotels, I would imagine they get you a pretty good price for an insurance package that exactly meets the requirements in the contract. It's one of the dangers with putting together one's own package is it might not be fully compliant, and then if there is a claim and it falls within the cracks, that can cause a legal problem. Yeah. And you know, from the brand's perspective, one has to understand that because the name's on the door, many customers do not understand it's a franchise property. If they get sick in the restaurant or their kid drowns in the pool, they're going to sue everybody under the sun, and insurance needs to be in place for that.
Undeniably, yeah.
So yeah, that is one feature. Another feature that's often a big point of debate is indemnification. So a franchise agreement will provide that the hotel owner indemnifies the brand from basically claims that arise from things that have gone wrong at the property. That is actually a correct position because it's the owner's property and they operate it themselves. They are being given some training and assistance by the brand in how to do that. But the brand's not there on the ground, you know, supervising the swimming pool and the chef and making sure there's no food poisoning. They'll just give you an ABC of housekeeping. So that provision as such is a reasonable ask. The debate tends to be around how wide that needs to be. Does that need to go beyond third-party claims to any loss the brand could possibly suffer because of something you did at your hotel? And then some owners say, well, you indemnify me back, which it can hold up negotiations a lot. In my experience, important to have a lawyer on that who understands the underlying issues, because otherwise people walk away from deals when they shouldn't over this point.
Yeah.
No, correct, yeah.
And I've never seen it taken out. It always stays so. Yeah.
It does stay in and does stay in for a reason, but there are tweaks that can be made to compromise. So this is our last slide with our top tips. So let's see, what top tips do we have? What are your top tips, Robert?
Just make the right choice on brand. And I mean it, get great advice before you sign that franchise agreement. Yeah, because it's a very expensive signature if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Top tip from you.
I would say, you know, reasonableness. You know, I mean, you know, there are things out there, you know, and it might be like somebody gives a 5-year contract term, but you know, if you go to a big group and you say I want a 5-year contract, most probably will not work. So, you know, there has to be any demands that basically you express towards the brand owner has to be reasonable. And at the end of the day, you know, if you try to negotiate everything and you try to, let's say, squeeze the deal on everything, most probably it won't happen. So that's why reasonableness is extremely important. Yeah.
Okay, top tip from me, negotiate the term sheet so you don't have unpleasant surprises when you receive the detailed agreement, and negotiate that with the help of someone who knows what they're doing. So to Panos' point, you don't say, I want to be able to terminate the contract after 5 years if I don't like you. That's not going to fly with any brand. Say,
Should do.
Save your breath.
Okay. Okay.
Well, we'll sort of come to the end of our sort of prepared slides. If there are any disagreements, comments, questions, please. Plenty. Okay, gentlemen over there.
Can you share with us some of the times when you come across changes from a management agreement to a franchise agreement where somebody like Robert goes in and takes over the operation? What are the biggest points of discussion with the brand?
Biggest points of discussion with, well, sometimes the brand want out. Sometimes the brand are looking for an exit as well. That does happen, where they're not getting as much out of it, or maybe the economics of that deal for them are not what it was, and that can be sometimes easier than you think. I have come across some fairly straightforward conversations, surprisingly, in certain markets when that's happened. Or the relationship with the owner has become very difficult for the brand because the owner's appointed an asset manager and they're screwing them into the ground, and it's very, very difficult, those conversations. So sometimes that does happen, and it makes it easier for the switch. And sometimes that can be, let's just arrange a handover. I've seen it as simple as that. Other times they're looking for some form of liquidated damages. But I don't know, how often does it happen with you that where some owners want to switch management to franchising? Does it happen? Management in your area is pretty prevalent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's prevalent. Yeah, so you wouldn't find that. I mean, there are owners that per se they only request franchising, and they have franchised units with different brands. But typically, no, that doesn't.
Well, there are good examples of amicable conversion from managed to franchise. I'm sure it's no secret that the Sheraton here in Berlin that's now a franchise managed by Event, and that's for Sheraton. No doubt the attraction is they keep a large flagship Sheraton in Berlin, and for the owner, I think the attraction was to partner with a management company that would manage the hotel more in accordance with their vision for that box. So
I think
if you're keeping the brand, there shouldn't be too many obstacles.
I've seen it in situations where brands just get worn out by the monthly meetings, the continued challenging of costs, which is hitting the P&L, because in sometimes managed environments, a lot of the central costs are hitting the P&L, and they just get fed up with it eventually. But it's painful. The whole journey can be very painful in certain situations. So.
A few more questions, I think. Okay, lady in red.
In your experience, have you ever seen any type of performance test in a franchise agreement, maybe on system delivery or things like that?
Nah.
I've seen one.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
One.
Yeah, what was that?
I can't say, but I've seen one.
Oh, share that tip. Yeah. All right, okay. Yeah, no, it doesn't happen. It should do. System delivery would be a great way to go. Definitely.
I think what owners are looking at is that for the brands to deliver more direct bookings, to reduce the cost of going via OTAs. And I think if a brand went to market and said, all right, we're going to guarantee you that many, I think that'd be really, really attractive.
Yeah, but the problem is that the day-to-day business is with the owner, So as we always say in franchising, the door is there, it's open, but you have to step in, So. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Where is jurisdiction placed on these franchise agreements?
I see a lot of English law, and typically arbitration is popular with franchises in remote countries. Sometimes you see English courts. I think Hilton like English courts. You don't often get local jurisdiction.
No, it also. I have seen agreements where where the hotel is based, so it's local law. So Scotland had a situation where it was under Scottish law. It was been negotiated at one point, but I don't see many of those around.
Swiss law can be good compromise sometimes.
Yeah.
Can be for management agreements considered no-go because of technical issues, but for franchising it's a good choice.
Yeah.
English law arbitration.
Okay, couple of more questions. I know we're running into lunch, so yeah, please.
Sorry.
Others, in the context of a three-way structure, how does the right to have a label operator contract compared to the franchisor in terms of term, flexibility, termination? Is that more or less in line? Or
No. I mean, if we don't perform, you fire us. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you want to sell the hotel unencumbered by management, we go. You know that it's the great thing about third-party management, unless you signed up to the wrong company, of course, is that it's severable on sale, and that adds enormous value to you, because it means your range of potential buyers is infinite, really. So severable on sale is very, very important. You know, if we don't hit certain performance targets around business projections or annual performance, the term is often shorter. Terms are typically 5 to 7 years, something like that. I've seen 3-year deals as well that we've done over groups, and depending on the scale and the opportunity. So it's a very flexible model, and I think that's why it's become very, very popular. I think. Really.
I can see people looking hungry, so maybe we should thank you so much for being a responsive audience, asking so many questions. Any unanswered questions come up, we'll sacrifice lunch and wait for you. But thanks for coming.